honors and AP classes are exciting for students and their families. They're a stepping stone along the path to college, serving as an excellent way to try out a major or a concentration. High scores on the AP test can also translate into instant college credit, and that is something that's really attractive about these courses, honors and AP courses. But navigating these types of courses just isn't easy for students and their families because they include not only rigorous work in the classroom, but also additional hours of independent study time when kids are at home. So in today's webinar, we are going to recognize the many questions and concerns that we all have about these AP and honors classes. And Sarah and I are two educators who can certainly provide everyone here with great information because we truly know honors and AP. So Sarah, why don't you introduce yourself to the people and then I'll introduce myself.
Hi, I'm Sarah Remlinger, and I have had over 25 years of experience in the educational world. And I've spent most of my career in college private academies and have taught everything secondary through high school. And then I am also an executive function tutor, as well as just a tutor in general, all the way through college. And these skills, and I'm so glad to see in the chat, there's so many middle schoolers in
Yeah.
here. And I want to
Mhm.
say first off, middle school is my heart. That's my jam. I love those kids. That's just a great time to really start honing some sustainable skills for them that is going to make them successful all the way through their college career.
Yeah. I'm Rachael Moss. I'm the coach and instructional support specialist here at Educational Connections. I've been an educator for over 15 years, and during my entire career in the classroom, I taught nothing but honors and AP classes in my concentration area, which is literature, writing, ELA classes. So as an executive function coach with Educational Connections, I work with students one-on-one every single day to support them as they organize their academics and also come up with strategies to help them work with less stress and greater confidence. And I checked this before the webinar started. I have about a dozen high school and middle school students right now on my roster, and every single one of those kids has at least one honors and AP class. So every single day of the week, I am working with kids as they work through these honors and AP classes. So let's go into like a preview of like AP and honors, how they benefit kids. So we know that they introduce students to more rigorous content, and they also allow students to try out more difficult classes while they're still in high school so that they can learn the basics of these majors. So, Sarah, I know that you and I are both working with students every day in our sessions, but how do you see that these classes really benefit kids?
This is such a great time for them to get involved with to see how if that's a college major that they're interested in. So I have a student who is interested in psychology, and so he's taking the AP Psych as well as statistics because that's AP Stats, because that's definitely both of those things are you're going to need to kind of pursue that degree. So this has just been a great training wheel session to see, hey, am I interested in this? Do I kind of have a bent on this? Because I'm always about pushing kids and their strengths, not working in places of deficit. And so you really can try these things out to see if you have a natural bent towards it, because we know that kids will succeed more if we work in that direction.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing in our chat, we have parents and family members of ninth graders, 10th graders. And I think that that really speaks to your point. When you have kids that are taking these honors, and maybe it's even called, in some districts, it's called even pre-AP. When they're in ninth and 10th grade, they can see, where do I have these areas of aptitude? And then do I want to pursue that when I go to college? So in this webinar, we are going to hit on three key strategies. We're going to talk note taking, talking about the fact that note taking is the key to unlocking test prep and also helps in that class work time. We're going to talk about something called analysis training because every single honors and AP class requires students to use lots of analysis. We're also going to talk about what we think of as sustained skills, the things that they are going to have to keep doing throughout the classes to really succeed. Now, as we're talking about all these, Sarah and I are going to be talking like mostly in generalities. So what we're going to do is we're going to encourage everybody here to go on to the College Board website, and I'm actually going to put this in the chat right now for everyone so it's clickable. And you can either scan the QR code or you can go on to the link that I'm putting right now in the chat. Find your student's subject. You know, if your student is in APES right now, AP Environmental Science, get on that portion of the page so that as we're talking about the tips and tricks, you can start to tailor it in your mind to your favorite student. So we're going to jump right in to our first area where we can really strengthen student skills, which is note taking. And I know, Sarah, this is something we always talk. I feel like every time we get together, we talk about note taking. Why?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Why would you say note taking is the first thing that can really supercharge a student's ability in these types of classes?
Well, I believe that not only does it help them in the classes that they're in, but again, it's giving them a lead up in life as far as when they get to college. Because
Yeah.
if we can create great note takers now, we can create great note takers in college. We can teach them how to take their notes and build their own study guides. So when those training wheels do come off in the high school level and they're used to getting study guides, we're teaching them how to take their notes that they've done a great job of and turn those into study guides for success.
Absolutely. And something that Sarah and I always talk about is the fact that note taking is something that we assume that
Mhm.
students can do, but it is truly a learned skill. Now,
Mhm.
one thing that I know as an educator and somebody who works with students in honors and AP classes every day in my sessions with Educational Connections is that every single AP class comes with a lot of note-taking apparatuses. So Sarah, like when I say that kind of thing, like what does that make you think of, or like what sort of insight would you want to give, families about the note-taking apparatuses that kids have?
Well, so Rachel, like one of the main things that you and I have talked about so many times is part of our executive function coaching is making sure students know where certain things are housed, such as
Yeah.
PowerPoint slides, such as handouts, and things like that. So not only are we teaching them how to take their own notes, but also going back to check to make sure that they have the information. And so if they're not sure where to find those, and I'm sure you've had this experience where students like, oh, my teacher posts nothing, they post nothing, but we have this great platform that we work on with kids and they're able to share their screen with us. And so we're able to get in with them and navigate their LMS, their learning management system, to be able to show them where those are at. And, like just the other day working with my AP psych kid, he was getting ready for a test. And I said, well, we need to find out where are your quizzes you've taken so that you can use those to springboard. Oh, we don't get those back. We don't get those back. Well, let's go look. Well, sure enough, there they were, all of his electronic quizzes, to be able to use those. Like that's a big eye opener. So that's a super important thing to know.
Yeah. I have a student I've been working with for about 2 years, and she really struggled when we started working together on finding those materials. And
Yes.
she would, when we started working together and she would share her screen, that was the thing. Well, my teacher doesn't post anything. Like, kid, it's right there.
Mhm.
Now
Right.
that we've been working together and she's taking AP Environmental Science, this kid knows where everything is down to a T. I mean,
Yes.
she is the CEO of her learning management system. And we keep talking about honors and AP and how it translates into college.
Mhm.
Well, this is following the college platform
Yes.
because, like, I have kids at all kinds of different universities. I have one at VMU Arts, and she loves it because the things that we worked together when she was in those AP classes in high school, it's the same systems now that she's in college. The professor is posting the PowerPoints. She can use those to structure her notes. So it's a very, like, it gives students those, I want to almost say like real world skills that
Yes.
translate to the college classroom. So note
Awesome.
taking, I think, like, to summarize, the first big tip here is help the student find out where the materials are online, because
Mhm.
every one of those teachers is giving them something, a
Mhm.
PowerPoint, a study guide, and that can really help structure the notes so that they can take them in class and then use them to study.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
So,
agree.
yeah, let's talk about now, Sarah. Sarah, when she said this analysis training, I was like, oh, tell me more. So this is like, I love this phrasing that you use. Sarah, tell us about analysis training and how it really helps students in honors and AP.
Well, it's really learning how to critically think through things as they're reading, not be just a bystander in their learning. But this is something, again, is a skill that has to be taught. So if you happen to be looking at that fantastic QR code or that link that Rachael just posted, you're going to see the kinds of things that these students are required to do, which is going to require a level of analysis that's not just recall. So when we're looking at AP exams, we're looking at 40% being multiple choice, 60% is in writing. And this is not just basic writing. This is not summarizing anything, but this is really breaking down. I teach students a thing where we go through and we identify certain words in a prompt, and then we have to analyze certain things and certain themes. And then we have to connect those things to make sure that we're answering the prompt, because so many times, I mean, honestly, if you don't pass the writing portions of these AP tests, you're not passing the test.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times they've missed the prompt because they haven't been able to connect those things. So this is where analysis training is like imperative, that they understand how to break down a prompt, and then they understand how to take that apart. On top of that, there are these lovely things called the DBQs, what are called data-based questions, where they will have this multi-layered question that they actually have to take information from, let's say, the 7 sources that they've never seen before that are put into this test. And then they have to bring in their outside knowledge, and then they have to mix it all up in this soup and like synthesize it all into this great new understanding. Well, that's not something that just happens. Like, this is literal, like, we've got to walk them step by step. And I think that that is something that Educational Connections does so well, again, with that one-on-one training and to be able to meet the student where they're at. And Rachel, what I am finding with so many of AP teachers, especially when they're coming to their junior, senior, they're kind of expecting kids already know how to do this and are just ready to practice. And so what I'm seeing in my sessions is that students are like, oh my gosh, I'm lost. Like, I have no idea. And so when we start to break it down, a lot of the test anxiety, we give them all these tips and tricks to be able to bring down test anxiety, to do quick outlines, to kind of brain dump so they can focus on what's before them. And so this is all kind of embodied in that analysis training.
Yeah. And you're going to notice this too in students that are younger that are taking honors or like AP track classes. So for a long time in my education career, I taught honors 9th grade English. And the document-based questions for literature are always difficult for students. So in my 9th grade honors class, I had document-based questions. You are probably going to notice if you look on the College Board website and your student is a little bit younger, not yet in that AP class, you are going to notice that the AP track or the honors classes are utilizing these same sorts of apparatuses. That teachers are getting students ready in these lower grades so that when they are in 12th grade and they take those classes, they have a ton of practice. And so, if you have a student that's in these classes, these terms, DBQ, document-based question, LEQ, long essay question, and FRQ, free response question, these may be very familiar for you. If you're new to this, we have some like by the numbers here that we want to talk about. DBQs, FRQs, and LEQs by the numbers. So the first number we want to talk about is 1. Each DBQ or document-based question is 1 hour. 15 minutes of that is time that the student is to read, 45 minutes is to write. And I want you to look down like the middle of the bottom of the screen, 7. Each DBQ has 7 primary sources that the student has to read in 15 minutes. If you go on the College Board, some of the released test portions for the DBQs are 15 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 2 of those on the AP test. So 1 hour and 40 minutes of the 3 entire hours for the test is this DBQ and FRQ. And just like Sarah said, every single day in my sessions, I'm working with students to help them on these writing tasks. That's my area of expertise. I'm an executive function expert. I'm also a writing teacher. So let's put those together. And then I think we all know that 5 is the highest score you can get, and it's really tied to the writing component. And
Mhm.
you may think, well, okay, I heard Sarah and Rachel talk about literature. I heard them talk about, AP US history. But there is an essay question on calculus.
Mhm.
I looked today at the Latin one before
Yes.
I got a stomach ache
Right.
because for the foreign languages, you not only have to write in your first language, but you also have to write in the foreign language. So every single one of these has some one of these tests, these tasks on it. And so that's where our sustained skills really come in. So, Sarah, tell us about sustained skills, why they're so important.
Well, again, it's that idea of what we can teach now, especially at these lower grades, these middle school grades before they get into high school and they get into the high stakes grading and then beyond to college. And
Mhm.
and I think like the two biggest sustained skills for me is reading and writing. And if we can establish strong readers and strong writers in the middle school time frame, it is only going to benefit them. Like, I don't think that there isn't anything that is like, oh, this class has too much writing. No, it's usually they don't have enough. And speaking of that, like I have taken summer sessions, that we offer. Like it's a great time to be working with a coach during the summer to really keep those skills or build on what they have to just keep increasing because it's just one of those things that is just going to take them and then how to communicate in the workplace. I
Mhm.
mean, it's just going to sustain them all the way through life.
Yeah. So I have an example on here from my area of expertise, which is, ELA classes. So AP Lit is one that a lot of kids take. It is a great class, like kids that are interested in law, that are interested in poli-sci, because you have to read a lot in those classes. So in AP Lit, a general reading for that class is about 12 assigned books, novels, like, primary works of literature. And then you give the kid a recommended reading list of 50 plus books
Mhm.
because the AP test for literature has a potential of thousands. And then the college board will say, well, these are like the 50 we're focusing on. So they have to be ready for any one of those
Mhm.
because they have to write on the spot about what they know. So you give something like that to some kids and they're like, oh my God, 50 books. And other kids are like, I would rather hot wax my head than
Yeah.
than do that. So, and it's not just in literature. The reading list for so many of the classes is difficult. And something that you brought up, Sarah, was the power of like summer sessions.
Mhm.
Because for honors classes and for AP classes, I know that probably when I say this, a lot of parents are going to understand, have that summer work. The summer packet that you get at the end of ninth grade that you have to have done for 10th grade. And that is often something where the kid gets it in late May, early June, and then it's like they blink and it's August.
Mhm.
There are ways that we can, especially with educational connections sessions, we can supercharge time in the summer and really have protected time and an extra measure of accountability to help with sustaining attention during a time when it's really hard to, you know, because that is
Right.
hard
And
for kids.
it is really hard. And then
Yeah.
keeping them on track to do it because, like we talked about before, you blink and it's over, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh my gosh, I got the packet to do. But the other thing,
Hmm.
like about reading, this isn't just sitting around reading for pleasure. I mean, there's a very practical, pragmatic way to read these books for the things that you need. So like even for APUSH, which is, US history, AP US history, you have to bring in so much background knowledge. So there are book lists and there are lists of things that need to be read that aren't going to be in those 7 documents, but they're expecting you to know about this time period or about these things. And so all of that can add into that. And so to be able to work with a coach to keep you focused and to keep you talking about the things in a very critical thinking way can only benefit.
Yeah. I worked with a student, I don't know if it was last summer or the summer before, but anyway, AP Computer Science had a
Oof.
coding project that
Yeah.
was the pre-class coding project that they had to do. And because we're a web-based coaching apparatus, it was great because as the kid is working on this, the coding was web-based. I could, I was helping the kid check it. Like I was serving as the user that was, and then the kid was on the back end, like doing all of that work. So there's just a million ways to help with this. But sustained skills, it really is reading and writing. And
Mhm,
not just reading for pleasure, not just
mhm.
writing in your journal, but reading for analysis and then writing, like following that trifold thesis that
Yes.
every English teacher hopes, kids really understand.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
So, we really want, I think that, we can maybe get into some Q&A. Right now, maybe we could, I don't, I'm going to open up my little Q&A thing that I don't have open. There we go. I got this open yet. Um, So, I mean, I want to give people like a couple minutes to, if they want to put a question in, you can put it in the chat. You can put it in the Q&A section wherever you feel comfortable. Um, would you want to start on that, Sarah?
Sure. What do you want me to do?
Okay. Yeah. So we have one question already, and then maybe as we talk about this, we're going to, get some others that folks will share. So our
Mhm.
first question, somebody says, what if a student has a disability in
Mhm,
terms of being a slow writer so that
mhm,
they may never be a good note taker? What do you think about that,
mhm.
Sarah?
So I actually have a lot of students that have learning differences that I work with. And, this is where we sit with the parent and we look at accommodations and we see what kind of accommodations that they're being provided. And sometimes we've been able to help parents make sure that their children have the correct accommodations that they should have. Because the important thing about accommodations, those can carry you through college. So they
Mhm.
don't always necessarily need to be the note taker. So I know that when my daughter was in college, she actually was hired by the college to take her notes and pass them on to students that had learning differences like this. And so those are things that are super important. But if they're not using them in high school, they can't translate to college. So those kinds of things are easy for that. That we can make sure that they're getting what they need.
Hmm. Yeah, I have to say I taught honors and AP classes, and I had lots of kids in my classes who had an IEP or a
Hmm.
504. So,
Hmm.
and just so we're clear, I also taught at the university level where kids also have accommodations. So these are things where when we identify what a learner's strengths are, and when we identify where a learner has an area where they need to grow a little bit, we
Hmm.
can support that. So aptitude, I mean, I have to be real with you. I had a student, this was years and years ago when I was in the classroom, and this child was born without the ability to have fine motor skills,
Hmm.
could not write.
Hmm.
There are ways to get that kid notes. There
Correct.
are ways to have the kid also, with adaptive technology,
Hmm.
but in the classroom, there are a million ways to get notes. You can have teacher created notes. You can have a note buddy system. And
Hmm.
even at the university level, students that have trouble with note taking will have a note buddy, will get professor created notes. These are great things to get established in middle and high school in your AP and honors classes because they will follow the kid when they go to college. I mean, that's just good education, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a question in the chat that says, how do kids know when they've studied enough?
That's a great one.
Hmm.
What do you think, Sarah?
Well, I think it's practice, 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 honestly. And it's not just, a lot of students, when they start working with me, their strategy is to look over notes. Again, this is where that analysis training comes into really important. Like just looking over notes isn't enough. So we're going to teach them those strategies and how to do that. But, there are so many practice tests out there. So when I start working with students, a lot of them don't know the resources or not utilizing the resources, like especially when we're talking about AP classes, they're not utilizing the resources that are out there that College Board puts out. They're not utilizing the things like Khan Academy that's out there to help. And so they just kind of don't know what they don't know. And so I think that that's a question that is very it's very subjective and it's very personal, depending on the student and where they're at. But it's definitely, I mean, and again, I think it's different for every subject. I mean, Rachel, what's been your experience?
So my experience is that generally this is all of us as learners. We
Hmm.
will study and we will have almost like a false sense of security, like, oh, I know all this, I know all this. Because generally, if and I think that this is all kids that are in like honors and AP classes, right? They are kids who are knowledgeable about a subject or interested in a subject. They're kids that are very academically minded. And so you look over your notes or you look over your materials and it's like, I know this, I know this. There has to be a way to separate out the known from the unknown. And like Sarah, you threw out some great ideas, things like Khan Academy. Well, Khan Academy, one of the reasons why educators really love it is because it has ways to check your understanding and to separate out the right from the wrong.
Hmm.
And an area that I think can really help students is actually to study misconceptions.
Mm.
So if you
Good.
study the stuff that you got wrong, you know that by learning it, you're going to increase your score.
Right.
Pinpoint the things that you know from the things that you don't know. We
Mhm.
always talk about, and this is something on the Educational Connections website, a thing that's called a stoplight study guide, where you use three colors of highlighter, the stoplight colors. Everything that you know, you highlight green. You highlight the things that you're iffy about as like caution, yellow, I have to study, and then the stuff that you really don't know as pink or red.
Mhm.
Well, if you do something like that, 60 to 70% of the page is going to be green because you know it, but
Mhm.
it's that 30 to 40% that takes you from the D to the A.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I totally agree with
Anything,
you.
yeah, anything that will pinpoint the areas of misunderstanding can
Yes.
really help the kid say, well, geez Louise, this is the stuff I have to study.
Right.
And then they can really understand, have I studied enough?
And I think one of the important things is like those quizzes that are leading up to that summative, whatever that is.
Yeah,
So many of my students, they don't realize that what they should be doing as soon as they get their quiz back is to go research every wrong answer that they had.
yeah,
Right? Because it's there, it's fresh, but they're not utilizing that little tool that's there, right? And so then
yeah.
that they're not easily studying those misconceptions. And so there's just some things that you can do really easily when you start to have like, holistic working with a student. And again, those are great study skills to be able to use for college. As soon as I also tell my students, you know what? The best thing to do is to walk out of a test and just scribble your notes on the things that you don't think you did well on.
Oh,
And then look those up because there's something in the brain with your chemicals that you're under some stress. And so when you go look it up, it's supposed to stick better. So, I mean, that's
yeah.
just using science to study. So let's go for it.
So we have another question. This is one of our attendees and has said regarding note taking, do you see a difference in effectiveness between handwritten and computer written notes by your students? Do you have a recommendation if there isn't a specific accommodation in place for it? I'm not going to say person that wrote this, thank you, because I'm going to start this one. So handwritten notes are best.
Mhm.
Research shows us this. They've been researching this since the 1930s. So there
Mhm.
was this one study. I mean, I'm not good at remembering like dates and names, but where they actually did things with, they started like with handwritten notes in like the 1940s, even like things that were plain notebooks versus notebooks that had like word searches in it or word puzzles. Because, and if we think about computers today, what they found out even in the 30s and 40s is that anything that distracts us from the task at hand, we are not going to take really good notes. There
Mhm.
are amazing programs out there. I have an Apple Pencil. I take notes on an iPad. However, when I really want to learn something, it is pen and paper.
Mhm.
Now, students that need accommodations, like I mentioned a student I had years and years ago who was born without a certain motor functions, right? Not everybody can do that. Not
Mhm.
everybody has the ability to hold a pencil and write on paper. But I think that for anybody that has that skill, it is the best way to do it. There is a connection in our brains. It's a connection between fine motor skills, things using your hands, and what you're thinking about.
Mhm.
So it supercharges your abilities. Now, at first, I will say students that don't regularly take notes, it is a learned skill. You don't
Yes. Yes,
you
for
don't
sure.
just pick up like, oh my God, I can do it. So
Right.
it takes a minute. So Sarah, what do you think? Like, what's your take on note taking?
Well, what I found with students who want to type notes, they're literally trying to get every word that a teacher says, which is also not the best way to type or to get any kinds of notes. So when they have to slow down and they have to handwrite, then they're able to grab the keyword things, which is what we're actually wanting them to focus on. But one of the things, Rachel, you and I talked a lot about is at the end of a session. So regardless of how much they got or how much they didn't get, because there's some anxiety there, but again, this is a practiced learned skill, and this is so many times we as teachers, educators, whatever, believe that they just have it and should know how to do it, but there actually needs to be some teaching. But the best thing that they can do is once they leave that class, just write up a 3 to 5 sentence summary, and that actually can be typed, and I found that to be effective. Just that summary piece. But as far as the note-taking piece, I am absolutely 100% on board with you that there's something that happens with the writing and the right and left brain and how that all works together. But that summary piece is huge. Now, kids, do they love to do it? No. But this is where we get to encourage them and help them get there so they start to feel success with it.
So I'm just looking at the time. We did have this listed from 7 to 7:30. Now we're going to continue with Q&A for anybody that wants to stay and ask questions and get them answered. And I know we have a couple other questions we haven't gotten to, but just for anybody that wants to wrap up and learn a little bit more about us. We have been talking about our executive function coaching at Educational Connections. Every one of our sessions is one-on-one. You can scan the QR code here to learn more. When we work with students, we are working with their work, with their courses, and everything is tailored to every individual student. I know that somebody in the questions answered asked us, what is the duration of this course? So the sessions with Educational Connections, this is not a course. This is working with what students are doing every single day in the classroom, elementary school all the way up to, we have some adult learners that we work with too. So if you have a student in those honors and AP classes, it starts with looking at their work, helping them plan, prioritize, not only their academics, but also like, is the musical coming up? Do you
Right.
have a birthday
Very
party?
practical.
Yeah, how do you get that all done? And you have 2 AP classes. We break down and chunk assignments and we develop customized strategies for all kids. So if you are interested in this, you can talk to one of these amazing professionals who will help you and pair your student with the perfect coach based upon their needs and based upon the coach's area of expertise. So for anybody that, maybe you want to stick around for more Q&A, which we can jump right back into, but if, you are thinking to yourself, this was great information, I'm going to think about it and maybe have a little cup of coffee, farewell, and we hope to hear from you. But Sarah, what do you think? You want to do some more Q&A?
Sure, I'd love to.
Okay, awesome. So we have somebody who says, my son likes more math and he would like to be an engineer. Oh, thank you, June. Okay. And this student is not interested in reading. What do we recommend for getting his interest in reading and writing? He's a math and he's an engineer kid. What do you think, Sarah?
Well, that's where I'm just gonna be honest. That's where coaching helps so much. I mean, it really does. We're not mom and dad doing the nagging, right? Like we're coming alongside and we are all team student and coming along and helping him and trying different techniques and trying different things. And because everybody that works for Educational Connections has a background in education, has teaching degrees, we all have different tools in our tool belt, and it's all really dependent on the student. There's just not like a one size fits all answer to that question.
Yeah.
But, there are certain things that we work within what their likes are and what their strengths are. And we start there. And what I have found, especially with my math science kids, the reason why writing freaks them out is because they are used to black and white and formulas. And so one of the things that I have developed over the years is taking kids through a process that's very formulaic. Now, kids that are natural writers hate it, right? They need something different. But those math and science kids, maybe they've had some English class, and not that it's ever going to be their favorite, but it's just not black and white. And so that's kind of usually part of the issue that I have found with the math and science brains.
No, I'm okay. So my background's in literature. I'm gonna answer this one a little bit more generally. Okay. So I'm I don't think I've shared this with folks that I work with. So here we go. It's a little
Oh,
secret.
oh, okay.
I read about 150 books a year, which like I'm sorry, you don't want a literature teacher that doesn't read, right? Like
Correct.
I'm currently reading 4 books.
Wow.
Not at the same time. So the thing with reading is that we often have this thing of, well, how much do you read, or how much are you reading, or how many pages did you read today?
Mhm.
Reading should be about understanding, it should be about learning, and honestly, it should be about enjoyment.
Yes.
So I would suggest tap into what your child loves.
Hmm.
Tap into what your child has interest for and encourage reading that has to do with those areas of interest. And also realize that there are many ways to enjoy text that don't have to do with sitting down with some 1,000 page like tome. You know, as many students I've worked with over the years, I have really gotten them into literature through things like graphic novels and comic books,
Yes.
amazing works of literature that also combine artwork that showcases emotion and depth. So it's like this beautiful marriage of different, art styles. I
Mhm.
also am a big fan of audiobooks. That
Mhm.
is reading. That
Mhm.
is enjoying something. So tap into what the student loves and encourage reading through that. I also think it's beautiful when families find common ground, like have like almost like a little book club. This is something my family, we're nerds, that we do. Like we'll have like a little book we read together,
Mhm.
because then you're extending that passion for a subject and then like you naturally talk about it. So
Right.
it puts that joy into it. So many times in school, reading is something that is assessed. Well, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, like you can have the biggest bestseller in the world, and as soon as you assign it to a kid, they don't want to do it. As soon
Yeah.
as somebody assigns me to read a book, I'm like, girl, no.
Mhm. Right.
And I read a
Absolutely.
ton. So
Yeah.
I think like, yeah, find what they're passionate about. Okay, so we got a couple other questions. Oh my God, so many good questions. Okay, so Rhonda asks in the chat, do you do in person or only online? Oh, thank you. That was a beautiful question you asked. Like the person that asked about the reading said, thank you so much. Thank you. I love that question.
Yes.
So the question from Rhonda is, do you do in person or only online? We are fully online, and
Mhm.
it is wonderful
Mhm.
because so we might think to ourselves, oh, okay, well, I would want somebody to come meet in person. I'm going to just speak practically, and then Sarah, I know you got some great insight on this too. So everything that kids are working on right now is online.
Mhm.
So if you're working in person, you have a grown up leering over a child's shoulder, like go to this screen, go to that screen. When we work online, they can share their screen. We are right there with them. It is so easy to see. It's easy for us to collaborate in things like Google Docs. So there is, just from a practical standpoint, the online environment is ideal. It
Mhm.
also supercharges your hour. There is no, come on in, take off your shoes, pet the dog, here's a glass of water. We meet with the student, and I mean, my sessions, in the first 3 minutes, we are
Mhm.
working on the material. You are getting that full hour of time between the coach and the student. What's your take on that, Sarah?
Well, just to add on to that, all the things I absolutely agree what you said, but just
Yeah.
to add on to that, having the online platform gives us instant access to specific strengths and kinds of tutors that we need in a moment. We might not be able to get Rachel, who has all this literature experience, into my home, but I've got her now for my student right
Oh,
here
that's
like that.
right.
And
Yeah.
so it is ability to really grab exactly what your student needs and the kind of tutor that I'm in Texas and I'm tutoring kids in Michigan and in
Mhm.
Virginia and Minneapolis and Oregon, like all over the country. I can't possibly actually have none in Texas that I'm doing in person. Like it's all everywhere. So I mean, it just is scalable. And so that's what's very cool. But speaking, but it's also very personal because we can get to
Yes.
you real quick exactly what your student needs.
Yeah, it is. I love that. You're right. I mean, like I'm in Pennsylvania. I have
Mhm.
so many kids in California,
Right.
like I don't know. It just lights me up. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, we got another question about notes. Okay. Oh, thank you everybody for these questions. This is the stuff I wish I could talk about this all day. So here we go. Do you teach the child how to take notes from the slides the teacher provided? I hear I'm not sure how to take notes from what the teacher provides. It is all there, or how to decipher the important information. Absolutely. So I'll talk about like what I do in my sessions because here's the thing too. In my role as coach and instructional support specialist, I get to work with all of the other coaches. And I'm telling you right now, the bench is deep. So
Mhm.
everybody that works with kids with educational connections is a master level educator. Everybody has their own spin on it. I will start with something very known and move to the unknown. So I ask kids, what's your favorite zoo animal? We get a little YouTube video about an animal and we practice taking notes on that because it's inconsequential. Then we talk about, okay, how were we able to take notes? Did we write down everything? How did you pick out what the key words were? So
Mhm.
now we're noticing the skills that we're using. And
Mhm.
then we start to incorporate, let's get out those PowerPoint slides from your calculus teacher.
Yes.
Let's get out those PowerPoint slides from your honors civics class. And
Mhm.
let's take some of this stuff that we're learning and apply it to what happens in the classroom. And then I generally will set some simple goals.
Mhm.
Let's pick a class that we're going to take notes in, and then how are we going to look over it together in our next session? So Sarah, like what kind of method do you use? Because I know you do great stuff.
Well, and it's actually very similar. And then the thing, like when you're listening to those videos and you're doing that together, is teaching a student how to listen and take notes. That's a whole skill in and of itself
Mhm.
because they're multitasking with all of that, and because we live in the instant reel connect flip past the reels that are there, they're struggling to learn to pay attention. And so this is also part of learning to pay attention. And I don't know about you, Rachel, but have you ever watched a video together and then you hear your student catch one thing and you're like, wait, you just missed
Yeah.
all of this, right? So those are the things we talk about. The other thing that that I use to transfer back to the classroom. Now, notice all these slides. Did your teacher just stand up there and read especially in AP, did they read everything on the slide? No. Now, why are they talking about those specific things, right? And so, like, one of my students is so funny, like, his goal, okay, is like, okay, I got to lock in when the teacher speaks. Yes, you are exactly right. So, how are you going to do that? So, what's going to roadblock you? Well, the 5 class clowns that are in the class and this and that, right? So, then honestly, to go beyond that, we start talking strategies that, again, sustainable skills for the rest of our life, how to pay attention. Because
Yeah.
honestly, that has been the breakdown on how to grab and teaching kids that it's what the teacher is talking about is usually the most important stuff. Now, are there exceptions to rules? Of course, there's always exceptions, but that's for another day. So, but learning to take notes in a class by listening to what they're speaking, because when they get to college, you're going to have a lot of that. They're going to have slides and slides and slides and slides, and the professor is not going to do that. Now, I have worked with one college student where, I got them because they thought, well, I don't need to go to class because my professor posts everything. So what's the point of class, right? So this is
Yeah.
where we get to talk about, guess what? You weren't there for the lecture. So you have no idea what's important in these 4,562 slides that you're going to have to go through. Like that's the problem. So, and again, those summary things, those are huge.
Yeah, that I have encountered that. So I think that I've had students before where they're college students and they do struggle with, well, everything's given to me. I don't have to go to class.
Yeah.
I have to say that students who learn these skills, especially in these honors and AP
Mhm.
classes, they realize the importance of the lecture and the importance of the work that is outside the class because the honors and AP classes are truly trying to replicate the college classroom
Yes,
where you
absolutely.
you have stuff that you are darn well responsible for doing outside of class and then lecture and instruction time it supports that you
Mhm.
know so
Mhm.
I think that those are things that AP and honors classes can really help guard against those pitfalls.
Mhm.
So I don't think we have any more questions. But I have had an absolutely amazing time. Thank you to everybody who is
Yes.
here. We would absolutely love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we hope to hear from you.